والليل سجى من وفرته. الله 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 محمد, peace be upon his soul. The greatest of prophets, Islam was his only goal.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful. I'd like to welcome you, dear viewers, to another in the series, Pearls of the Prophet. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah's peace and blessings be on each and every one of you. In this segment, we'll be looking at statement of the Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessing be upon him, with regards to the believers. Who among the believers are best, or what's best for them? We will begin with a hadith or statement of the Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessing be upon him, in which Abu Huraira reported that Allah's Messenger said, Al-mu'minu al-qawi khayrun wa ahabbu ila Allahi min al-mu'min al-da'if wa fi kullin khayr ihris ala ma yanfa'uka wasta'in billah wa la ta'jaz wa in asabak shay'un فلا تقل لو أني فعلت كان كذا ولكن قل قدر الله وما شاء فعل فإن لو تفتح عمل الشيطان. The strong believer is better and more beloved to Allah than the weak believer, though there is good in both of them. Cherish that which benefits you, and depend on Allah, and do not despair. If a calamity befalls you, do not say, if only I had done that, it would have been like that. Say instead, it is the destiny of Allah, and He does whatever He wishes. For if surely opens the door for Satan. This statement of Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessing be upon him, begins with an analysis of the believers. The strong believer is better and more beloved to Allah than the weak believer. This is not strength with regards to what Allah has destined with regards to ourselves, our physical selves. Though a Muslim who utilizes what physical strengths Allah gives him or her and develops them positively so that they are stronger people physically, they are better than those Muslims who do not utilize their physical gifts in a way which is beneficial and strengthening for themselves. So they are weak physically, weak by choice. On this level, the physically stronger believer is better than the weak believer. Not to say, as I said, where Allah has destined that some people will be, no matter how hard some people work at being stronger, they will not reach levels of strength of others. So those differences which are destined by Allah, this doesn't make one better than the other. However, utilizing what Allah has given us will make one better than another. A Muslim who eats junk food, doesn't take care of himself or herself physically, becomes obese, becomes physically just decrepit. This person is inferior to a Muslim who eats properly, making sure that whatever foods they take are good foods, beneficial to themselves. They exercise regularly, keep themselves in a good physical state of being. Such a person is better. They're looking after the bodies which Allah has given us. However, take it beyond that level of physical strength to the level of spiritual strength. Of course, the believer who is stronger in faith is better than the believer who is weaker in faith. Strength of faith is something we should all be striving for. We should all be working for. That strength is built not by theoretical reflections and philosophical contemplations, but it is built by actions, righteous deeds, acting in accordance with our beliefs. Such makes a person a stronger believer, and naturally one who has more good deeds, who is living in accordance with the teachings, is better than one who is not. This is the fact of life. This is the reality. No one can deny. However, Allah says through His messenger, both of them have good in them. The person who is a believer has a basic good. So though belief may not be that strong, though they may not be doing that many good deeds, the fact that they have the belief, that is good. It is better than not being in a state of belief, doing certain deeds which may be construed as good deeds, but not having belief, not believing in Allah. Such a person is the worst of mankind. They have denied God. They've denied their responsibility to God, to worship God. Then the Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessings be upon him, went on to say that we should cherish that which benefits us. We should be very anxious to capture all that is beneficial to us in this life, to not let it go. We're always looking, seeking, ihras. We're always seeking for those things which are beneficial for us. This is our focus, this is our attitude in life. This is how we should be. The things that are good for us, these things we should never let go. This is what should be most important to us, the things which are beneficial. Not merely on a physical plane. Yes, to have a nice house and a nice car, to be able to afford to fly here and there, and these are things which are beneficial to our personal satisfaction, the pleasure that we get from it. There is some benefit in the sense of the pleasure that we get from it. But the real benefit that is spoken of here by the final prophet of God to mankind, Muhammad, may God's peace and blessing be upon him, is not that. What he's talking about, what he's focusing on, that we should be particularly striving to achieve and to gain that is beneficial to us, are the things which are beneficial and lasting in their benefit. Not the things that are beneficial and they end shortly thereafter. We have a big house, or we die, we don't take the house out of this life. So the benefit of the house is very, very limited. These are not the things that are truly beneficial to us. But using that house in a way which is pleasing to God, that is, maintaining a household which is a God-fearing household, in which God is worshipped, God is remembered, people advise each other to righteousness and to patience. Such a house is a beneficial house, a house environment. These are the things which are beneficial to us, the Islamic environment. Whatever we can do which can benefit us physically in this life with limited benefit, but we utilize it in such a way that it is pleasing to God in accordance with the teachings of the Prophet, may God's peace and blessings be upon him. The benefit of such things is not limited to this life, but goes over to the next. So the benefit that we should strive for most sincerely and be very anxious not to allow to escape us are the things which benefit us in both this life and the next. Then the Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessing be upon him, went on to say, and do not despair. If the calamity befalls you, we shouldn't despair. I mean, if we strive to do things and it doesn't work out, don't fall into despair. It's Allah's destiny. If it were good for us, then Allah would let it happen. If it were not, Allah has prevented it. So we shouldn't despair over things which we are not successful in, that we strive to do, that we want. Allah's destiny is there. And in order to avoid falling into this state of despair, the Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessing be upon him, said, if a calamity befalls you, do not say, if only I had done that, it would have been like that. See, this is the sign of despair. If only I had done this, I could have done this. If only I had done that, I could have done that. You know, this kind of state just feeds a state of hopelessness and despair, where a person feels that he is a failure, he did the wrong choice, or what, these type of things. Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessing be upon him, said, instead say, Qadarullah wa ma sha'a fa'al. It is the destiny of Allah, and Allah does what He wishes. He is the one who determines what is going to happen when we strive to do things, whether it will be manifest or whether it is not. As the Prophet warned us, because if only I had done this, that if opens the door for Satan. Satan, who wants us, the evil forces want us to fall into a state of despair, where we will turn away from God, because when we're in a state of despair, we're saying, God, why did you do this? Why didn't you let this happen for me? Why didn't you make this work? I've been a good boy, I've been a good girl. Why didn't you do what I wanted? This is despair. These are words of despair. And these are evil words. Satan wants that for us, and it comes through the door of if. So instead of saying, if this thing happened, we say, MashaAllah. It is as Allah has wished. So Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessing be upon him, has reminded us that what is desirable is strength, physically, spiritually, and strength of character, wherein we will seek the things which benefit us, and we will not fall into despair when things don't happen as we wish them, but instead be patient and recognize Allah's destiny in our lives. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful. I'd like to welcome you, dear viewers, to another in the series, Pearls of the Prophet. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah's peace and blessings be on each and every one of you. In this segment, we'll be looking at prophetic guidance with regards to business, how we earn our living, and how we exchange our goods. Prophet Muhammad was quoted by Abu Burda ibn Nayyar, who said that Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessing be upon him, said, أفضل الكسب بيع مبرور وعمل الرجل بيده. The best earnings are from a blessed sale, and the product of a man's own hands. The best earnings are from a blessed sale. What is a blessed sale? بيع مبرور. A blessed sale, one which has the blessings of God on it, are fundamentally sales which involve halal products. That is, what Allah has identified as being halal or permissible for us to have, to utilize, etc. Such a sale has to be based on such products. No matter how honest, etc., we may be in the process of our dealings, if what we are selling, what we are buying is not permissible, then this act of buying or selling does not have the blessings of God on it. Secondly, the method in which the sale takes place, it should not involve any deception. Either deception on the part of the seller or deception on the part of the buyer. Deception can take place from either side. The seller who is selling his product may know things about his product which the buyer doesn't know, and he conceals that knowledge from the buyer in order to get his product sold. This is a part of modern finance, business, that the more effective you are in selling products which are defective, without people realizing it, making your maximum profits with a minimum amount of expenditure, the more successful you are as a businessman. But this is against Islamic business practice. Built-in obsolescence, which is standard in products today, where a manufacturer will use inferior components which will break down after 1 year or after 2 years, so that the buyer will be forced to replace these components. It's good business in terms of earning capital, but it is evil. This is not blessed by God. The proper approach to business is, from an Islamic perspective, to produce a product which is of the best quality possible. As the Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessings be upon him, said, "Inna Allah yuhibbu min ahadikum idha amila amalan an yutqina." That Allah loves from each and every one of you, if you do something, you do it to the best of your ability. So if you produce a shoe, or you produce a camera, or a car, it should be the best that is possible for us to build. One that will last. Our goal is not to get the person to replace that product either completely or partially as quickly as possible. This is not our goal, but to provide an instrument or a product which is beneficial to the society. This is the proper approach, where a person produces such a good and the person buying it that is not involved in any kind of deception, because deception can be involved even in the case of the buyer, where something is auctioned, for example. You may have people who are deliberately keeping the price down, making particularly low bids to force the buyer, the seller, to sell it at a lower price. This involves certain forms of deception, Or, of course, using counterfeit bills, etc. This is all deception. Such purchases are cursed by Allah. So, the best earnings that a man may gain, the wealth that he gains as a businessman, is from a blessed sale. One which does not involve any form of deception, and one in which the product being sold is halal. The second point that the Prophet, may God's peace and blessings be upon him, made was the product of a man's own hands. And in another narration, he mentioned that Prophet David used to live off the efforts of his own hands. And this was Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessings be upon him. He also was a trader. He went out with camels, caravans, selling products, in other parts of the country. He was a trader, earning through the efforts, his own efforts. Own hands could be taken to mean agriculture, where you work with your hands literally, planting, etc. But of course, in modern times, we have machinery. May not be putting our hands in the soil, but we're driving the machinery. So really what it means is not necessarily the physical act of actually being involved, but that the individual is involved in the process of earning his living. And that means that there is less dependence on other people. Rather than the middleman being the middleman. Somebody has a product, you buy it, then you sell it, you're just the middleman. This middleman is part of a necessity in modern business to some degree. However, what is preferable is the one producing the goods, selling it directly. This is better. More middlemen, the higher the price. The person who is buying is the one who suffers. So really the best way is to produce the product yourself and to sell it yourself. What you earn from selling it yourself directly is blessed by Allah. Better than going through the middleman. So in this statement of Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessing be upon him, he has encouraged us to be involved in whatever business we are producing. Not just to be a manager sitting up in the main office where we have no contact with the rest of the people, we just sign papers. One could say, well, this is a product of the man's hands, but this is not what is intended here. This signing of papers, this is not being involved in the production. No. A manager should be involved in the production that is taking place. He should be amongst the workers. He should know how they're thinking. This way he can ensure that they're not being oppressed. Because when a person stays in his office only signing papers, then the little man who's down, the line in his business, he doesn't know what is going on with him. Perhaps he may oppress that person without realizing it. So Islam encourages the managers to come out of their managerial positions and be amongst the workers in the sense of being in contact with them, seeing, getting a hands-on kind of situation in their jobs. So they get to know the people who are doing what they're doing and sharing it to whatever degree they can. Of course, the job may involve certain technicalities that the manager cannot be involved in. However, by being amongst them, sharing with them, it also builds a better feeling amongst the people who are working there, and it gives a better understanding to the managerial staff as to the needs of the company as a totality, not just in certain areas of sales, etc. So the Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessing be upon him, has encouraged us to have a hands-on approach to earning our living. And that whenever we're involved in sale, we should keep in mind God's laws. Business is not divorced from religion. We cannot be a good person praying 5 times a day, fasting Ramadan, but when it comes to the business, we are devils. Devils meaning we will cheat, we'll steal, we'll lie. Deception is our way. No. That prayer, that fasting is meaningless if it is not reflected in our business. So the good earning is that which involves halal products and no deception, complete honesty. With that piece of advice, I pray, dear viewers, that you have benefited from this statement of the Prophet, may God's peace and blessing be upon him, which is geared towards guiding us through our day-to-day lives in a proper fashion. And I hope that you will continue to be with us in the coming segments of this program, Pearls of the Prophet. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
الصبح بدا من طلعته والليل دجى من وفرته الله 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 Muhammad, peace be upon his soul. The greatest of prophets, Islam was his only goal.